Strong Conversations.
Good evening. And you are right. I am not Dr. Carolyn Strong, but don't worry, I have not wrestled her into a closet somewhere. She is here and she is going to be on our esteemed panel as we have a really important conversation. Is really important among Black women and Black people, and that's a conversation about colorism. So I am joined by 6 wonderful women, and I'm going to start with introducing the hostess with the mostest, and that is Dr. Carolyn Strong, who is a cultural light bringer with plenty of shade. Oh, does she have shade? The firebrand for the culture is an educator with decades of experience working in urban education. She's passionate about educational equity and rewriting society's often inaccurate narrative of Black women and girls. Dr. Strong strives to empower administrators, teachers, and students to practice anti-racist ways of being and encourages people to never shy away from good trouble. Dr. Strong, welcome. See, she's here and she's safe.
I am not in the closet anymore. I wrestled my way out.
Dr. Ebony Speaks Hall is a licensed clinical social worker. She's the founder of Dr. Ebony Speaks Hall and Associates, where she offers clinical services and individual and corporate coaching. In addition, she consults with businesses and nonprofits in diversity, equity, inclusion, and social justice. Dr. Ebony is Associate Educator, Faculty of Social Work at the University of Cincinnati. She serves as the first Black woman president for the ACLU of Ohio. In addition, she is the former vice president of the National Association of Social Workers. Dr. Ebony advocates for LGBTQ plus rights, criminal justice reform, and child welfare reform. She is a sought-after motivational speaker. Dr. Speaks Hall, welcome.
Hi, thank you for having me. Thank you. Hi, you guys.
Tiffany Johnson is an actress and former child model, currently managing her daughter's career in theater and TV. Additionally, she is an adoptee rights activist and advocate who has provided free DNA kits to adoptees and former foster youths to aid in reunification. She's been featured on various podcasts and interviewed by publications such as Romper about adoption trauma, the importance of family identity preservation, elevating adoptee voices and conversations about adoption, as well as how race and the over-surveillance of low-income and BIPOC communities fuel corruption within foster care and the adoption industry. Welcome, Tiffany.
Hi.
Hey.
Didn't I tell you these folks were awesome? So Katina Leaks is a mother of 3, a data analyst in the healthcare industry, and also the creator of the Meow University, a pleasure ed organization. Katina, I want to hear more about that. Katina is constantly looking to improve human connections through communication and understanding, whether it's intimacy or analytics. Her work spans from data management to event planning and concierge services. Fun fact, Katina enjoys poetry, anime, and long walks on the beach. Katina Leaks. I feel like I have to say it like that. Why are you like
that? Thank you. I am so humbled by this amazing group of Wonder Women today.
I also, and I apologize, Asha, if I get your last name wrong. I should have asked you how to pronounce it. Asha and Tim? See, I'm smarter than I look. Nonprofit director, mentor, and author, Asha V. and Tim wows crowds as a motivational speaker, instructor, and panelist on silencing negative self-talk, taking the leap of empowerment, and manifesting destiny. She is both the founder and executive director of the Chrysalis program and the author and illustrator of the Dark Brown Girl collection. Welcome, Asha.
Thank you. Happy to be here.
And lastly, but definitely not least, Dr. Jamila Coes. She was nominated to represent Bullock County as Teacher of the Year. She went on to become Georgia's 2014 Teacher of the Year. She spent 6 years teaching English language arts and math in both general and special education setting at Langston Chapel Middle School in Statesboro, Georgia. She's the director of teacher leadership at Mount Holyoke College, where she leads the program, develops curriculum, and provides professional development opportunities for teacher leaders. She's also a professor at the University of Georgia, where she teaches future educators along with future professionals dedicated to disability advocacy. Welcome to Jamila.
I just like to say I got smart friends.
Right?
Thank you.
I just wanted to put that out there.
How did I get in here?
Girl style.
So we're going to talk about colorism today, and I want to do some level setting because a lot of people don't understand what colorism is. It is a term that was coined by Alice Walker in 1983 in her book, In Search of Our Mother's Gardens. She defined colorism as, quote, prejudicial or preferential treatment of same-race people based solely on their color. So, for sure, the outgrowth of colorism is that there is some intra-racial tension between light and dark people. And sometimes light-skinned people are harmed. But the reality is this, that the closer you are to whiteness, the more socially acceptable you are. Social stratification follows color. The lighter your skin, the wealthier you are likely to be. The darker your skin, the poorer you are likely to be, for instance. So we want to speak about the fact that the closer you are to whiteness, the more socially acceptable you are, and how that is a burden specifically to Black women. All right? We all on the same page?
Level set.
Level set. All right. Question. And I'd love to hear from all of you on this one. When did you first understand that dark-skinned women and girls are treated as less valuable than lighter-skinned sisters? When did you first know that?
Are we just jumping in and talking, or
Go ahead.
all right? For me, I know it was very young. Like I was probably kindergarten, like 5 years old, when I started to notice it. And even though I didn't have the word like colorism, I noticed that how some teachers have favorites and they're always a lighter skinned girls. Mm-hmm. I noticed how if I did the same exact thing as a lighter skinned girl, I was punished, but it was cute when she did it. Mm-hmm. I noticed it within my family. I'm adopted, but my father has biological children, and one is a couple of them are lighter, and how he favors them and dotes on them. So it was something that I realized particularly early, like very early.
Yeah. So connecting to Tiffany, I noticed against the backdrop of my sister. So my sister is actually darker than I am. So I am the lighter of our family, but I am still very much dark skinned. But my sister is darker, and I would see the way that other people treated her. And I would see how she would internalize it, and I would see how she would have to do extra work to affirm herself. So I always, and she's older than me. So, as a younger sister, you're always looking up to your sister, right? Like you are looking to her for like what to do, how to act, how to behave, like what are the things that, how does society work for you? But but I saw that part of her, and I knew that it meant something different to be darker skinned. I remember even feeling like, should I be happy that I'm lighter than her, or like what should my relationship be with the darker skin? But what ended up happening was that I'm like, I want to be darker. How do I get darker? So then there was that sort of identity for me. Like, am I dark enough? Like, I want to be, I want to look more like her. I want to, embody that. So that's when I noticed.
For me, it was very early on. Just conversations that I would overhear. I don't even remember how young I was, but both of my parents came from parents from the South. And so a lot of the conversations were like, oh, that, if you're light, that's right. Just like little stuff like that, hearing that like my grandmother bleached my mom's skin just because she thought that it would make her have a better life. My grandmother on my other side thought that if you ate cornstarch, your babies would come out lighter. And so like she did that and encouraged her children to do that. And so even like the difference in how I was treated versus like my lighter skinned cousins, that we all come in from outside, but I gotta wash my dirty hands because like I'm brown and they are not, and whatever they do is it's okay, because they were lighter. And so just having that dichotomy in your life and very deeply ingrained into who you are can kind of like I liked light skinned boys because I felt like that was the standard. I felt like, that lighter is cute. And so it took me a long time to kind of see the problem with that.
Well, I'll jump in here. I would say I noticed early, like around kindergarten or so, your doll options, right? You didn't have very many doll options that look like you. I remember when the Cabbage Patch Kids came out, and I just thought they were just the best thing since sliced bread, right? And, I got one. I was happy to get my Cabbage Patch Kid, and I named her Lisa. I had to fill out the birth certificate, and then, I had people that would say, family members, them damn dolls ugly as hell. You look just like that damn doll.
Yeah.
And you just kind of like, it just kind of pop your whole bubble, and you get teased relentlessly by family. Family will make fun of you. They'll make comments like, you'll see the lighter skinned babies, or, some people don't get dark right away, like they kind of transition it to, so, as babies, they be like, oh, keep them out the sun so they don't brown up, don't do that. So it's like when other dolls became available and people say, oh, I got this for your birthday, I thought about you. You didn't know how to take that. You didn't know if it was a compliment. Are they calling you ugly? Or, because people would just make all of these awful comments about either the dolls or you personally. Like I get plenty of jokes about my skin between myself and my uncles, making fun of me. But, I just noticed lighter skin relatives, they got made fun of, just not for their skin. That was the easy, I would say the low hanging fruit for the joke, was to say something about being black, compare you to patent leather, like, you out there in that sun, you're gonna look like patent leather,
African booty scratcher. That
all
was the
that,
one.
all that.
Can you put Sandy Pruitt's comment back up, Carolyn? I just wanted to read it. Sandy Pruitt said, I'm 68 and had the same experience at school. And that's really sad because she's much younger than me, yet we had almost identical experiences with teachers at an early age. So I also wonder, and I want to get to you, Ebony, and also Carolyn, but I'm also wondering, as you're telling your stories, has anyone experienced this from both sides? because some of colorism is relative, right? When
Right.
you're around darker people, they may tell you you're light, may view you as light. When you're around lighter people, they view you as dark. So I'm wondering if anyone has had the experience of both the privilege and the oppression of colorism. And you're saying no, Carolyn.
I have not.
I would say I have not either. I think for me, my experience, I'm adopted also. And so my dad's family was super light skinned. They're from Kentucky. His brothers are all married to white women. And then he married this dark skinned woman, my adopted mom. And so I would hear them make comments about my mom, like, she's black and she's this way. So I automatically knew at the time that there was something wrong with being darker skinned, because there was continuously jokes being made about my dad marrying the dark skinned woman. He didn't marry a white woman. And my dad was lighter skinned. And then I also had a niece who was also light skinned, and we were the same age. So I watched people do like preferential treatment, like with her, like even till today, like we both had babies around the same time. She got like massive stuff from my family. Now I got great stuff, but not from my family. Like she got like the carpet rolled out for her at her baby shower. And I'm like, what is going on? This looks like us when we were 7. I mean, my aunt one time was going to sneak her to Disney World and not take me. So like, it was always like, she got this preferential treatment, even very young. And then I remember when I specifically got older, I always hung with like lighter skinned girls. That was who was on my block. And I remember just the preferential treatment we would get when we would go out to parties. Like they would get, I wouldn't get. Like guys would try to holler at them. They would turn them down, and then they would try to holler at me. I'm like, now, why would you think I wanted you if she just turned you down? Like, it was like, well, let me go to her and see if she'll take my number. And I'm like, no. Like, but I remember that I had very light-skinned friends in high school, long hair, light skin. I always hung out. And I will say this authentically, they never made me feel like that. But because we hung out where we went, typically they were the ones that got the holla. I mean, I didn't even start seeing darker skinned girls in music videos till the 2000s. So I mean, like, I didn't see like any representation, even if it was in rap videos. I never seen us until like 2000. So that was my experience kind of growing up.
So I wonder, you talked about the difference in treatment in your family. Have you ever been able to articulate to your family that, and what is their response?
I think for me, it was much later when I got older, when I was able to articulate it, but it was kind of swept under the rug. Like, no, it was just a joke. That wasn't for real. I mean, we were just playing around. It wasn't a joke. And then my sister is also lighter skinned. So she would call me like Black Bees all the time growing up. And just kind of give you guys background, I didn't find out I was adopted till I was in my 20s. So like, it was like a conception. When this stuff, I actually was happy I found out, because I never knew why my lighter skinned sister was so mean to me growing up. And a lot of her comments was like, you black, big nose, blah, 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 like all the time. Like very young, she was calling me these names when I was like high school, elementary. And I didn't understand and conceptualize what was going on. But my complexion was being weaponized against me, also being the fact that I was also adopted, and she felt like I was intruding on her, her space or whatever.
Stakina Rollins says, as a kid growing up, I would hear my aunt, who is light-skinned, call my mom, her sister, black ass all the time. It's like she did not realize how that hurt every time she said it. Carolyn?
I think for me, it was also very early, and it was happening at school and at home. But I will say that the school piece was a little more esoteric, in the sense that I didn't realize what was happening until I played it back later. It was one of those things where you have that movie moment where everything is moving in slow motion, and you're like, wait a damn minute.
Yeah.
Because it was I was always, quote unquote, one of the smart kids in class. Mm-hmm. And so, the smart kids get special treatment. They get to watch the class when the teacher's gone. They get to have all of these special privileges bestowed upon them. Now, and it's all done by test scores, which in retrospect, is, as an educator, is so grimy, but that's what they were doing back then. And so one of the things I knew is that my scores were the highest in the class, and if not, sometimes the highest in the school. And but this one girl who was, light skin, long hair, would always get the preferentialist of the preferential treatment. And it was like, yes, I know she is smart also, but why am I only watching the class when she's not here? Why am I specifically and very strategically being made to be second fiddle to this girl that I know I'm smarter than, if that's what we're truly basing this on? I mean, and don't get me wrong, that shouldn't happen either. But if that's what we're basing it on, why am I always behind her? And then there was another situation where they pulled us from a grade, two of us, me and the light skinned girl, pulled us from a grade, placed us in a grade higher. And we were supposed to be doing we were supposed to be doing the pullouts for math and reading. And it got to the point where it was explained to me that she couldn't keep up with both workloads. So they just placed her in the higher grade because she couldn't keep up with both. Wow. But I had to continue to go in between because I could.
Wow.
Which didn't make sense. And then Asha said something about playing outside. I'm like, you got to go outside, because I didn't. My mom was very clear, you are dark enough. And when everybody else was outside, I would be on the porch with the visor thing watching. Mm-hmm. So I did not get to go outside.
I'm thinking about, well, one, like, this is all very powerful testimony and something to think about as we're thinking about Black girls and young women today, and how much, like, this colorism doesn't begin once we get grown. It begins when we're small. It begins when we're at home, sometimes with the people who are supposed to love us the most. Mm-hmm. And so when people sometimes act like Black women, just for some reason, have low self-esteem, why wouldn't you think you're beautiful? It's because for many of us, the fact that the idea that we're not beautiful has been drummed into our heads. But I also want to think of, talk about some systemic ways that colorism is reinforced. And Carolyn, you touched on one in talking about school, but it occurs to me that like 75 years ago, colorism was often enforced by like paper bag tests or blue vein tests that would keep you from getting into some of our Black legacy organizations. We don't really do that anymore. But what
do we not do that anymore?
What do we do? We don't call it that. Fight me, Carolyn. What do you think we do? What do we do?
I mean, okay, fine. We've got the legal language down, so we don't get sued.
Right.
But there are very much still those blue vein legacy things out there. It's like, even I'm gonna just put it out there, even when you look in the D9, when you look at a person, you think, oh, this person is probably a member of this organization based on this, or this organization based on that. So no, it's not in the handbook and the bylaws anymore, but a lot of that stuff hasn't really gone anywhere. And I know that a lot of it is still fresh for me because it was so heavily rooted in my dissertation. Even when you look at like suspensions, even when you're talking about an all Black school, darker skinned students are still punished at higher rates for the same infractions than their lighter skinned, also Black counterparts.
There, you reminded me, and I think I brought this up to you when we started talking about this topic. There was a meme that was circulating a few weeks ago with a picture of, it was actually a boy. It was a dark-skinned boy. You could see like the edge of his hair, and it said, those kids with the ground beef hair be so bad. And everyone was sharing it and laughing at it. And the only thing they were using to define this kid as bad, ill-behaved, stupid was the fact that he had tightly coiled hair and dark brown skin. Katie King said, messaging comes so early. I remember my dad, the playa, aka Ho, whenever he described a woman as ugly, she was always dark skinned. He'd talk about them like a dog. He was an ass, and every woman he saw as beautiful was light skinned. That's actually my next question. What role do Black men play in reinforcing colorism as it impacts Black women and girls? Because we know in our society, women are. Their value is judged based on how attractive, how fuckable people think they are, basically. And when you are not close to the ideal, then that is reflected in how men value you. So what role do men play in reinforcing colorism?
I'll go. I think for me, because of the societal messaging, I think that I became distrustful of the men that did find me attractive. I always would be like, well, why? Like, what's coming? Where's the joke, or something like that? So it was really hard for me in the beginning, because at one point everything was sexualized. Even as a kid, every time somebody would comment, it was very sexualized. I will never forget. I walked into the corner store one time, so I was still corner store age. So we talking 10, 11, 12. And this man walked up to me, and he did like the forearm pin you back thing. He was like, I need to know, is your mama as dark as you? Because your skin is just beautiful. And I'm like, and luckily there was an old lady in the store. I will never forget. She was, getting her cigarettes. She was making her cigarettes run. And she was like, if you don't get off that baby and let her go, because he straight had me pinned on the thing, trying to find out if my mama was as dark as me. And I'm like, and what if she is? Like, you gonna fight my daddy? Like, what's gonna happen here? And then there was another time. This wasn't a Black man, though. This was a white man. I was getting my navel pierced, and he could barely pierce my navel for remarking on how the betadine that he was putting on it to clean the area was the same color as my skin and how beautiful it was. So it's those instances that those creepy instances that just have made me distrustful. When somebody says you're nice looking or I find you attractive, it's hard to trust it. It's very hard to trust it.
I know for me, I like to ask, who'd you date in the past? What they look like. Because if you've been dating a string of light skin or white women, I'm like, so what you coming over here for? Like, why all of a sudden now you want a darker skin woman? Because I'm like, I think sometimes, we're looked at as exotic and things like that. And I'm like, and it makes me feel like, I don't know. Like what now is making you now starting to want to date darker skinned women? And so I know for me, before I got married, when I was dating, I was very adamant about like, what's your preference? Because you're not about to make me feel bad about myself because I'm not lighter skinned. If you got a preference for light skin, then we probably should end this date now because I'm never going to be light skinned. So,
Adrian Foreman said, it is ingrained in me to believe Black men almost always worship light-skinned women and the women know it. It's it's confusing, right? Because, Carolyn, you and Ebony, you're both talking about like the exotification of dark-skinned women. But on the other hand, like I interviewed a woman for my first book, The Sisters Are All Right. And she was talking about how she felt really ambivalent about changes in music videos. because she grew up like in the 80s and stuff like me. And she's like, back in the day, you watched a hip hop music video. And I mean, the girls look like Keisha from down the block. They look like me. They were a range of colors. And now she's like, you look at a music video and the women are all biracial or Latina
Racially
or white
ambiguous.
or very light skinned. And she's like, I mean, I guess I'm glad I'm not objectified. But then on the other hand, what does it say that I'm not objectified? And I don't know how to feel about that.
Mm-hmm.
Katie King says, let me just say it. Men are colorist, especially old Black men, in a Christian patriarchy where men choose, never being chosen wears on you, especially when you see the light-skinned girls get catered to. When men say they prefer light-skinned, heck, it's the same now, except now they prefer white women. I said what I said.
You're not wrong, sis.
Go to bed, Tiffany, but I'll read
Mm-hmm.
what you said. There's a difference between wanting to wife someone and wanting to have sex with them. Our society seems to identify light-skinned women as the prize, while darker-skinned women should just be glad they're getting any attention. That's from Dr. Tiffany Monfort Dent, who we wish was here tonight, but now we are demanding that she go lie down because she's sick.
Exactly.
Go to bed, Tiffany.
Go to bed.
No, but that's true, right? I remember growing up, like I'm a 90s kid. And during that time, especially, well, even now, I guess, but it was just so openly for guys or boys to be like, I don't date dark skinned girls. Or you the darkest I'll go. Or you pretty for a brown girl. And for me, like, not only am I darker skinned, but I'm tall. So those are two things used to masculinize me, right? Mm-hmm. So the darker you are, the taller you are, whatever they can use, the more coarse your hair is, whatever they can use to try to masculinize you, it gets worse and worse. And so, like, I agree for the same thing. Like, people that, I like you. I'm like, why? What you want? People didn't notice me in high school until they were like, oh man, she got a butt. Let me like go get in her face. It's just like sex, and not like, in the most aggressive ways, right? It's never anything sweet or anything like that. And that really, it plays on your psyche in a particular kind of way. And so it's like, do I just play this up and make it work for me? Like, what do you do with this, right? When you're darker, they don't let you be feminine. They don't let you be soft. You don't get to be soft. You don't get to be feminine. You're hard. People talk to you. Well, for me, like, people have a habit of thinking they can talk to me any kind of way, and I'm sensitive. Like, don't talk to me. Don't talk to me crazy like that. Like, I'm a woman, and I think she's right. It's like, it went from just light-skinned girls to the fetishizing biracial. Let me say this, because light-skinned and biracial are not mutually exclusive, so I'll say biracial with a particular phenotype, right? Mm-hmm. Biracial women to Latino women to now it's just white women. So where does that leave you in the mix in dealing with that? It's like, what am I supposed to do with that?
That's good.
Oh man. I guess I'll jump in since we're talking about fetish and all of this stuff. But I think men play a big role in it, as in reinforcing stereotypes. Darker skinned women, we didn't have a lot of representation in media, but the ones that did, like, I don't know, Grace Jones. And it went from like Grace Jones to, Diane Carroll or something like that. There was no real in between. So if you had any type of, I don't know, pizzazz to your personality, people would, equate you with Stranger. You're like, huh? Wait, no. If you had to act extremely elegant like Diane Carroll to be, acceptable in a social setting, then you're uptight and stuck up. There was never an in between where you get to just be yourself. And yes, you start to be distrusting because you don't know if there's some other alternative behind it. like a joke. People can be really cruel, or the creepy end of that, like, are you, do you have a fetish for this? Like, I'm not a fetish, I'm a person.
Right.
If you think I'm beautiful, it's just really hard to take a compliment when people devalue your beauty. Just doesn't sit with any body, particular standard that society gives us. You are outside of what's considered normal, but you are normal because you were born like this, and it's not unusual for people to have darker skin. So it just makes you have this almost like, I don't know, like a self-conscious tick, just like, yeah, yeah, like Jamila Camille says, pretty for a dark skinned girl, or people make a comment about, oh, you're so well spoken. What?
Your hair is so clean.
I've gotten that, because I had locks, and people were like, your locks smell really nice, and I'm like, well, thank you. It's
They don't look like dirt or nothing.
You know what I'm saying? Like, what are you saying right now?
Right.
And yes,
Can I just jump in there for 2 seconds? Because I want to speak to the stuck up piece, because that adds another onion to unpack, because then it becomes, who are you to be stuck up? Look at you. How dare you? Like, what are you even stuck up for? Right. So it's like, in addition to everything else, I'm trying to carry myself in this dignified manner, and now you're telling me that this is yet another reason that I don't have the right to exist.
Yeah.
And I think the really punishing thing is these ideas are so ingrained in our community that, every year or so, some high profile man, some rapper or a baller or something will just blatantly say something colorist, will, clown dark skinned women, and everybody's just like, they still get to be heroes. They still get to be role models because it's not remarkable. I mean, not many people are outraged besides some women. I wonder, given all that, and I'm going to pick on you, Jamila and Asha, because you guys are too quiet. Have you learned to navigate colorism and be all right? And if you have, how?
I have. To get back to that first question you asked a while back about, I've been on both sides. In some spaces I'm light skinned, in some spaces I'm dark. I've been told many times, you're pretty for dark skin. I don't normally talk to dark skinned girls, but you're pretty. And I'm just like, I'm not pretty in spite of being dark. I'm pretty because I'm pretty. And so I want to just also say that I don't think it's all men. I feel like a lot of it has obviously come from slavery, of it being like, if you're lighter, you're just better, and they want what's good. And people who are still in that slavery mindset might still want someone who looks like they were created by the master of the plantation and a black person together, because that's what a light skin is, right? Like, a lot of times you're lighter because you're mixed with some sort of other race or whatever. So I married a Ghanaian man who's obviously very dark. My children are dark brown girls, and so I had people ask me, like, what you gonna do when they go to school, because they dark, and kids can be really hard on dark skinned kids. And I experienced some of that with like my daughters, but I feel like for me, I created the Chrysalis program for that reason, to like build the confidence in them before they even started school. We were doing affirmations because I wanted nobody to be able to come and tell them they aren't beautiful enough or they're not smart enough, because they already know who they are before they get in that space. So they realize, if there is an issue and if you think it's something wrong with me, it's really something wrong with you and how you see yourself, because a lot of it is just self-hatred. But people say I don't like a dark skinned people. It's like, but you black, so ain't your mom black? And so I mean, not all, of course, all black people um, don't love themselves, and so sometimes that's just projecting how they feel about themselves on other people. And I don't think that they even real like I feel like the people who said you're pretty for a they really thought that was a compliment. Like they weren't trying to hurt me. And so understanding that people only know what they know, and they can only be responsible for their own experiences and perspectives based on that. And so it's our responsibility to teach them better. And so for me, that has been my saving grace. Navigating the world is saying, like, you can believe what you want to believe, but here's what I believe and here's why. And being open to extend grace to people who are ignorant, and trying to help them. And some people don't want help. I mean, don't I get that, but where I can, I try to share and share images of darker women. If you follow me on any type of social media, you'll just see we blackity black 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 over here. And so I feel like society is starting to catch on, and black is beautiful, and we're starting to see it more, from Lupita to Issa Rae. Like we're starting to see black women portrayed as beautiful and soft and desirable outside of just sex. And so I feel like we're making strides. We got a ways to go, but I feel like we're not where we started.
Mm-hmm. So I will also add to that in many ways. And so my family is, they are for the most part a little bit darker than me. My mom is about my complexion. So I was fortunate to grow up with a lot of people that have darker skin. Even in the communities that I lived in, went to school in, most of the people had darker skin. There were also white people. I think at one point in first grade, I was the only black kid in class, but there was no light skinned people in class. So I was just black, right? Like I was just a person of color. So there wasn't anyone else to sort of compare me to in that way. But one of the things that I was fortunate to have was thinking about like songs that came out, right? So like Tupac, who was problematic, but has the song "Black of the Berry, Sweet as Juice," right? And like thinking about like how affirming is it for black women, darker skinned women, to have music like that. So like moving beyond Tupac, because like again, problematic. There were lots of songs that I listened to in growing up, like India Ari, right? And like affirming all of the ways that dark skin is beautiful, and dark skin is acceptable. So I had a lot of examples around me to say, like, your dark skin is beautiful, which has really helped me to be like confident in all of the ways. Like, I don't think that there's ever a moment, or there has been moments where people have been like, or have said, something that would say that I'm not as attractive because I'm a dark skinned girl. But like I didn't even hear it, right? Like that just washed over me. Like I couldn't even hear that sort of that noise. And like in the work that I do now, so this is also problematic. But in the work that I do now, I do a lot of equity work, right? So I'm going into spaces and I'm talking to people and telling them about like racism, colorism, like all sorts of things, right? And I think some of the reason that some people are willing to listen is because I am darker skinned. Like I think they might question the authenticity of what I'm saying if I was lighter skinned, which again is problematic because light skinned people are also black and they also have like expertise and experience in what racial injustice looks like. But I think that it is helpful to like have the experience of a darker skinned person, particularly when you are talking to people who don't have that experience and who are trying to understand better racial identity and what it means to be black in America.
But you know, when you go in those spaces, you're talking about trauma, and who knows trauma better than a dark skinned woman? So of course they're like,
You are exactly right. You're exactly right. Which I'm glad that they listen, right? Like I'm glad that they are now listening. So there's something to be said about that, but it is also problematic that all of these things that have occurred continue to occur, and then it takes a dark skinned woman to tell them something different without them doing that learning and thinking on their own. So.
I think she brings up something very interesting because one time I was having a discussion with a bunch of Black professional women, and we were talking, and they were like, "I'm more likely to believe Maxine Waters than I am Cory Booker," and they were talking about that they believe. This is what they said. Like, I believe somebody's more. They were saying they felt like the authenticity of Maxine Waters because she was darker skinned. Like, I feel like I can trust her. I feel like I can believe what they said. Yes, this was I know, Carolyn, your face was like mine too, right? Like, I'm just thinking of Cory Booker and another light that wasn't just light skin, but it was just there's a whole lot of other things I was thinking of, but it wasn't. But they were saying that they were more like they felt like they trust darker skinned congresswomen more than they trust lighter skinned congresswomen. And that I know I thought you guys' faces were just as I was just as flabbergasted, and they were just saying that they felt like because she was darker skinned, they felt like they could trust Maxine Waters, what she was saying. And I'm like, oh, and so I was like, well, is it because some of you guys are problematic, have a problem with who Black women are married to? Because I know that also goes into it too, like who their spouses are, right? And some of them admitted that was also the case, but I've heard that they felt like Maxine Waters is more trustworthy. They were like, I don't know, I just trust her. She's darker skinned. She's been through some stuff. She's been
It's giving Mammy and Docile Negro rolled into
exactly,
one.
exactly. And so I was just as I'm just saying, like I felt like I don't know. That's what I felt like in these spaces sometimes. Are we getting this credence because we're darker skinned? Like, I mean, you get what I'm saying? Like, I feel like because that what she's saying that came up. Like, I heard these are Black women talking about this.
Well, think about, when you see Black women portrayed on television. So dark skinned is one part of the mammy myth, right? Mammy is dark skinned. She has broad African features. Her hair is nappy. She's fat. All of those things, and all of those things are coded as caretaker. And run some stuff there to fulfill your desires, all of those things. And when you see that, like in popular culture, it's always the dark skinned Black woman judge or the dark skinned Black woman cop, those roles of public servants and helpers and caretakers. Kiana Rice said, I have coworkers check with the darker skinned coworker to confirm whether an offense occurred. I wonder what, as we near the top of the hour, what are some practical ways that our communities can stop harmful ideas of color hierarchy? Because so much of it is nurtured in our communities. What are some practical ways we can tackle that?
So I'd love to jump in real quick right here because one of the things that I always do, no matter what, anytime so there's something special about like young Black girls. Every single time I see one, like it doesn't matter like where we are, like it could be a grocery store, it could be at a playground, it could be at school. And there's something that connects me to her like automatically. Like I see so much potential in her, so much power, so much light in her. So I always take the time to tell her like how beautiful she is, how wonderful I know she is, how smart she probably is. And then I talk to her a little bit and I'm like, you are brilliant. And just affirm her in all of those ways, because I think that those little messages that we get along the way, even when we're hearing lots of other negative messages, hopefully, like my hope is that we hold on to some of the little messages of kindness and of affirmation that may come. So I think one way is to affirm Black girls at any time that you can do it.
Crystal Lennox, I want to share this. I want to hear from the rest of the panel, but Crystal Lennox said, I think colorism is so important to talk about. I've always struggled with saying one Black woman has more trauma than another Black woman, but reality is reality. Thank you for speaking your truth. I wanted to point out that it is important for us to talk because it's not true that all Black women have the same struggle and trauma. It is not true that all Black people have the same struggle and trauma. within our Blackness are a lot of different intersections and privileges and oppressions. And so it's important we talk about the ways that some of us have unique trauma. Stakina Rollins said, for those of us who have dated, married an African American or African man, do you feel or see the difference between the days in which African men can be more accepting of an African American or African woman?
I can speak on that, mostly because even before I married my husband, who is West African, I dated almost exclusively African men because when I like the difference between the two, I feel like slavery just did a number on us, man. Like I feel like a lot of black men, not all of them, do have a lot of issues with women and black women in particular. And I feel like they they some of them like relish in mistreating or hurting black women, and I feel like the darker they are, the more they want to hurt them. And that was my experience, and it may not be true for everybody, but that is what I experienced. And then I dated I think a Nigerian brother first, and then my first love was like a Somalian guy. And so like just being treated with like softness and tenderness, like I never saw that from a black man other than my dad. I just like the harshness of like feeling that black women are supposed to be strong and they are maybe considered like tougher, or that they're competing with black women. And I don't feel that from African men at all.
We live in a constant state of you'll be all right. Yeah. The world tells us we'll be all right. We tell each other we'll be all right. We tell ourselves you'll be all right. And the men that sometimes are supposed to love us and protect us tell us we'll be all right too.
Right.
So anyone else have any practical ideas for how we turn the tide in our communities?
For me, I try to shut it down in my family. Like, you're not allowed to talk about good hair, bad hair, light skin, dark skin. Like, I really, really try to address that. Like, calling my nieces fast. Like, I don't play that. Like, I really, really try to work really hard, because I do have darker skin nieces. I have light skin nieces. And I have some with their hair down their back and some is not, And so my family used to make very much like light of that, like, your hair is so long, and like they would do that. And so I try to really address it in my family a lot of times. One time I sent out a group text and was like, hey, we're not going to call her fast in this text message. That's what we're not going to do, right? Like, we're going to have a conversation, but we're not calling her fast. And then I have to remind them of their past when they were sleeping around. So
that was different.
Right. That's not the same at all.
So I do try to stop it there, and then even many times, like, I have some nieces that are in some very abusive relationships. And I've noticed that their men will use some verbal things regarding their complexion. And so what I try to do is I don't try to shame them out of those relationships. I try to be a listening ear for them, and try to be an ear to talk about like the things how great they are, what they have to offer, and just trying to get them to see how amazing they are, that they don't have to tolerate that type of, treatment. And so I really have tried to start within my family in particular, with trying to change that whole idea of like colorism within my own family.
I think talking about it for me has been this first step, and just certain things that we allow because they've always been done, just kind of shutting those down. When my oldest was born, who's 20 now, good Lord, I'm old. When the 20-year-old was born, I was very clear with my mother. There will be no pinching of noses. There will be no looking at nail beds and ears. Either you going to love and accept this baby or you're not. That's just period. And kind of shutting those things down that we just kind of proliferate because it's what we've always done, and not thinking about how harmful those things are.
So, as a last, we are almost at the top of the hour. And as a last question, I'd love to ask, how can your sisters show that they're in solidarity with you? What can other Black women do to make you feel like you're supported and beautiful?
Affirmations. Just to continue to support and affirm sisters, um, really encourage their humanity, really, because that was one thing, dealing with colorism, you really feel was robbed of you was your humanity. I'm a human. I'm beautiful. I have emotions. I can be mad. I can be upset. I can be happy. I can be vulnerable. I can be soft. So affirm and encourage humanity.
I feel also acknowledge that this is an issue, right? Because I feel like a lot of times when you bring the colorism conversation up in the Black community, a lot of people deny its validity, and I don't feel like my the program, the Chrysalis program used to be called the Dark Brown Girl program, right? And I know it doesn't really roll off the tongue, but like I wanted to be intentional about affirming Black women and girls, and I wanted to be clear that it's okay for us to have something for us because the world gives everything to y'all, And I wanted to have a space that was for us, and so I just would love the acknowledgement of instead of it being like, no, you're creating a problem. You don't know how many times I've heard that in the last 6 years. You're creating a problem where there isn't one, and you're telling these girls that they aren't beautiful. I'm not.
Meanwhile, I've been over here like, why you change it?
Because they were like, can light skinned girls come? I'm like, yeah, you can. You said no. Well, I did want it to be inclusive, so I did change it, but I did not change the name of the book series. And I feel like I'll have a book called Pretty for Dark Girls, like a play on the words. It's really called Pretty and it's written for a dark girl. Just affirming every part of us as Black girls and women. And I've had to defend that so much. But just the acknowledgement, I'll just leave it as that, is being able to acknowledge that this is something that's real. It's not made up. It's not in our heads. We are not crazy. This is something that needs to be addressed.
And I would add real quick, to be in connection and community with each other. I think just like connecting to other Black women, giving them, if you have opportunities, giving them opportunities, like, and just being in connection and community. My daughter is 9 and she has a group, Black Girl Wall Street, where she came together with all of her friends to like do things like for Black girls, like to make like a marketplace or whatever. But just having that connection with other women and just affirming them, just remaining in community and connection, I think is also an affirming way to highlight who we are and how important we are.
I think also, oh, go ahead, Tiffany. Go ahead.
I think taking the time to do the work to unlearn their own skin tone biases is really important. Because when you sit in a place of privilege, because it is in circumstances, you don't realize it. And I think that's why we get the pushback when we bring it up and they're like, well, we're still Black women too. We still have these issues. And it's like, girl, we do not live the same life. We don't navigate the world the same. And so I think that's really important. Also being conscious about language that's being used. We talked about the phrases that, where you're pretty for a dark skinned girl, good hair, bad hair. And I know this is a different conversation, like you can't address colorism without addressing featureism. Like it's all wrapped up in the same thing. And so I think, and this applies, I think, to darker skinned women too. Like, there are darker skinned women that have those same internalized feelings, and then we put that out there to the other girls and young girls. So it's not just us getting it from lighter skinned women and dark skinned men, it's us doing it to each other. And so just, I think everybody just taking the time to really sit and unpack that. You guys have already said this, like normalize the conversation and the differences between skin color. I agree, shut down negative talk about it, but don't shut down the conversation altogether, because when you shut it down, then it's a bad thing. I shouldn't talk about skin color because it's a bad thing, or differences with skin tone because it's a bad thing. Yeah, that's all I got.
I am honored to have spent this last hour with you. Thank you, Asha. Thank you, Jamila. Thank you, Tiffany. Thank you, Katina. Thank you, Ebony. And thank you, Dr. Carolyn Strong, for letting me take over your program once again.
I always am glad to have you.
Strong Conversations. I am the Tamara Winfrey Harris. And I thank you all in the audience for watching Strong Conversations.
And I do just want to jump in. Next week, we're back to our regular day on Thursday. And next week, I am continuing the What Will It Look Like When Black Lives Matter in School series. And so next week, we'll be talking about policing Black bodies. And I will be talking to my stuff's not showing up. I will be talking to Ida Nelson, who is the mother of Jet Hawkins, who precipitated the Jet Hawkins law, which states that in the state of Illinois, you can, if you're a school that receives any type of funding, you can no longer put things in your dress code that discriminate against African-American hair. So those don't let your boys come with braids or locks, or don't allow girls to wear braids. In Illinois, that is now illegal. And it is all thanks to Ida Nelson. And she will be strong conversationing with me next week. And I am super excited about it. So if we don't have anything else, thank you, Tammy, for taking over my platform. And thank you for letting me, and for all of y'all for rocking with me. Until next time, y'all.
Thank you.
You've been listening to Strong Conversations, hot takes from a cultural firebrand. Make sure to like our Facebook page at Strong Conversations or follow us on Twitter at Dr. Carolyn Strong. Until